What if I told you? There's a dark psychological trick that successful people use, without even realizing it, to stay calm and in control when everyone else blanks out. They rely on this over and over to win people over in high-stakes conversations. And it works. Because they've mastered 3 counterintuitive truths most people never even think about. First, you don't have to impress people to win them over. You just have to make them feel heard. Second, the person making you freeze during a big moment, they're not across the room. They're inside your own head. And third, maybe the most surprising of all, the secret to saying the right thing is letting go of needing to say the right thing. Now, most people assume they blank out because they're nervous, or just not good under pressure. But that's not true. Because when the stakes feel high, your brain doesn't reach for the right words. It reaches for safety. Studies show even Navy SEALs and top CEOs blank under pressure. Not from lack of skill, but because of one primal instinct. In the next few minutes, you'll discover the real reason your mind goes silent when it matters most, and how to rewire your brain to stay sharp, calm, and connected under pressure. So if you've ever walked away from a moment thinking, I knew what to say, I just couldn't say it, this might change the way you speak forever. Stay with me, let's begin. Here's the part no one tells you. You don't go blank because you're nervous. You go blank because your brain thinks you're in danger. Imagine this. You see her at the cafe, the girl you've been wanting to talk to. She's finally alone. You've imagined the moment a dozen times. In your head, it goes smooth, confident, effortless. But now, in real life, what happens? Your body moves forward, but your mind freezes. Everything you planned evaporates. And suddenly, you're face to face with the moment you feared, and you have nothing to say. You reach for the line you rehearsed, but it's gone. All that's left is a blank screen in your head. And later you replay it over and over, wondering, why does this keep happening to me? Have you ever experienced this? It's not just you, and it's not about lacking confidence or charm. This moment, that freeze, it's something deeper, something hardwired. Because the truth is, in that split second, your brain isn't trying to help you connect. It's trying to keep you safe. But from what? That answer lies in the most ancient part of your brain. The part built not for connection, but for survival. And once you understand how it works, you'll start to see every awkward silence and sudden mental blank in a whole new light. Let's go there next. Here's something you've probably never admitted out loud, because it's kind of embarrassing. Imagine this. Jason had prepped for this presentation for over a week. It was a big opportunity. His manager's manager was in the room. He had the numbers, he had the slides, he even practiced his intro in front of the mirror. And for the first 2 minutes, everything went fine, until someone asked a follow-up question. It wasn't even a hard one. But Jason froze. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His brain went quiet like a TV on mute. He laughed awkwardly and said, "Let me circle back to that." But in his mind, the damage was already done. He walked out of the room feeling like he'd just failed a test he was overqualified for. And maybe you've had your own version of that moment. A date where you ran out of things to say, a meeting where your voice cracked, a conversation where you felt smart one second and blank the next. It's not that you didn't know the answer. It's not that you're bad at conversations. It's that your brain read the moment as dangerous. Not physically, but emotionally. What Jason felt was a social freeze response. His brain, specifically the amygdala, triggered a mild survival mode. It didn't care about being smart. It cared about avoiding embarrassment. And that's the crazy part. Your brain would rather say nothing than risk saying something wrong. But what's even more surprising, you can trigger that same freeze, even when no one else is in the room. Let me show you how. Here's the mistake most people make. They think the more pressure they feel, the sharper they'll become. But for your brain, pressure doesn't sharpen. It shuts down. Let's understand this with the story of Alicia. Alicia was always the witty one. Funny, fast-talking, confident, the kind of person who could keep a room laughing without breaking a sweat. But on this day, none of that showed up. She had just been invited to speak briefly at her best friend's wedding. A casual 2-minute toast. Easy, right? She stood up, holding the mic. All eyes turned toward her. She smiled, opened her mouth, and nothing. Just a swirl of static in her head. She stammered something generic. Love is beautiful. They're perfect together. And quickly sat back down. Her hands were shaking, her face flushed. This wasn't her. She wasn't someone who went blank. But the truth is, everyone does, even the confident ones. Because what happened to Alicia wasn't about memory, it was about pressure. In high-stakes moments, your brain goes into what researchers call cognitive overload. Too much internal pressure. Don't mess this up. Be impressive. They're all watching, hijacks your ability to think clearly. The prefrontal cortex, the part that helps with language, ideas, and timing, gets overwhelmed. And the harder you try to sound smart, the dumber your brain feels. That's why Alicia, who's brilliant on most days, suddenly felt like a deer in headlights. When your brain is under pressure, it doesn't create, it protects. And protection doesn't care about performance. But what if I told you, the pressure might not even be coming from the moment itself? Sometimes, your brain starts shutting down before you even speak a single word, all because of one hidden signal you're sending with your body. Let's talk about that next. Here's what almost no one realizes. Your brain listens to your body first, and sometimes it believes your posture more than your thoughts. Picture this. Matt didn't expect to feel this nervous. He was just introducing himself in a group workshop. Something casual, just a few people sitting in a circle. But as his turn came closer, something strange started happening. He crossed his arms, his shoulders tensed. He started looking down at his lap, avoiding eye contact. By the time he opened his mouth, his voice cracked, and he stumbled over his name. It wasn't that he didn't know what to say. It's that his body had already decided the situation wasn't safe, and his brain followed that lead. See, here's what's fascinating. Your mind isn't always in charge. According to psychologist Amy Cuddy, our body language doesn't just reflect how we feel, it can create how we feel. When you shrink your body, fold your arms, lower your chin, tighten your posture, you're signaling to your brain, this is a threat, stay small, stay quiet, and the brain responds. Stress hormones increase, verbal fluency drops. Your ability to think clearly gets buried under the command to survive. On the flip side, when you expand your posture, take up space, and open your chest, your body sends the opposite message. You're safe. You belong here. And your brain starts to perform like it knows you do. That's why sometimes changing your words isn't enough. You have to change your body first. But even posture can't fix the one thing that does the most damage in these moments. The voice inside your head. Let's go there next. Sometimes the person making you blank isn't across the room, it's the one inside your own head. Imagine this. Nina had done everything right. She was interviewing for her dream role, a creative strategist at a top firm. She knew her stuff. Her portfolio was strong, her prep was solid. But as the interviewer leaned in and asked, "So, tell me what makes your ideas stand out," she felt her chest tighten. In the pause that followed, Nina wasn't just searching for the right words. She was battling a voice. Say something smart. Don't sound like a fraud. This is your one shot. Don't blow it. And the more that voice spoke, the smaller she felt. She gave a vague answer, rushed it, and left the room feeling like she'd left half of her brain behind. Here's the painful truth. Most of us aren't blanking out because we're under attack from others. We're blanking because we're under attack from ourselves. Psychologists call this self-monitoring overload. When your internal dialogue becomes so loud and judgmental, it hijacks your working memory. It's like trying to sing while someone's whispering criticisms in your ear. And here's the twist. The more you care about performing well, the louder that inner critic gets. But here's the good news. The goal in high-stakes conversations isn't to impress. It's to connect. And connection doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being present. Which brings us to something unexpected. A trick used by FBI agents, hostage negotiators, and elite communicators that quiets the pressure and instantly builds connection. Let's see what it is. Next. You don't have to impress people to win them over. You just have to make them feel heard. Imagine this. Mark had just stepped into his first client pitch meeting. He wasn't new to the material. He'd rehearsed every slide. But this was different. The client was big, the stakes were high, and the room felt colder than he expected. As soon as he started talking, he could see it. Crossed arms, blank stares, phones being checked. His voice sped up. He tried harder. More stats, more features, more buzzwords. But the harder he tried, the more disconnected the room became. Until one moment, when he paused and said, "I'm sensing I might be missing what's most important to you here. Can I ask, what matters most to you in this decision?" Everything shifted. The client sat up. One of them smiled, and they started talking. Not about numbers, but about trust, support, and feeling like their needs actually mattered. Mark barely used half his pitch, but they signed the deal anyway. Here's what happened. Mark stopped trying to perform and started to mirror. In Never Split the Difference, former FBI negotiator Chris Voss explains that mirroring, repeating the last few words someone says, or gently reflecting their concerns, signals psychological safety. It tells the other person, "I see you, I hear you." And in that moment, connection replaces performance. You don't need the perfect words. You need to shift the energy in the room, from defense to dialogue. And when you do that, you don't just calm others, you calm yourself. But there's one more piece to this puzzle. Because even with all the right tools, pressure still creeps in. So how do you stop blanking? Not just sometimes, but for good. Let's unlock that next. The key to speaking clearly under pressure isn't about trying harder. It's about becoming more present. So, picture this. Ria was about to meet her boyfriend's parents for the first time. Dinner had barely started, and already her fork felt heavy in her hand. Every small silence at the table felt like an interrogation room. She wanted to say something, anything. But her mind was stuck between be charming and don't mess this up. So she smiled too hard, laughed too loud. And when someone asked what she did for work, she froze for a second, as if she'd forgotten her own job. Later that night, she sat in the car and said, "I don't even recognize the version of me they just met." And the truth is, most of us have had that version of ourselves show up. The one that's trying so hard to perform. We forget how to be. But here's the shift that changes everything. When you focus on performing, your brain spirals. When you focus on connecting, your brain settles. Psychologists call this the presence effect. When you drop into the current moment instead of rehearsing the future or replaying the past, your mind becomes available. Creative, calm, clear. A few simple techniques can anchor you there. Take one slow, conscious breath before speaking. Feel your feet on the ground. Ask a genuine question instead of delivering a perfect sentence. These tiny grounding cues signal to your brain, "We're safe here." And when the brain feels safe, the words come back. But there's one final twist. Because the real secret to never going blank isn't just in breathing better or standing taller. It's in letting go of the need to sound right and stepping into something deeper. Let's talk about that next. What if the secret to saying the right thing is letting go of needing to say the right thing? Picture this. David was at a startup networking event, surrounded by people who talked like TED speakers. He'd practiced his elevator pitch a dozen times. But when someone asked, "So, what do you do?" he choked. Not because he didn't know, but because the moment felt too big. His brain flipped through his script like a shuffled deck, and all the lines felt wrong. So instead he laughed and said, "Honestly, I help brands tell better stories, but I'm still learning how to tell mine." The room went quiet for a beat. Then the guy smiled and said, "That's probably the most honest thing I've heard all night." And just like that, the pressure broke. Here's what happened. David stopped trying to control the moment and stepped into it instead. Neuroscience backs this up. In Presence, Amy Cuddy writes that people who accept their nervousness, instead of fighting it, actually perform better. Why? Because surrendering creates authenticity, and authenticity creates trust. It brings your attention out of your head and back into the room. When you let go of the script, something incredible happens. You don't sound perfect. You sound real. And that's what people connect to. So the next time your brain starts spiraling, try this. Take a breath. Say what's true. Let the moment be enough. Because your goal isn't to win the moment, it's to stay inside it. And once you understand that, you realize this isn't just about talking to someone. It's about rewriting every high-stakes moment in your life, from interviews to first dates to negotiations. Let's tie it all together. So here's the truth. You never went blank because you weren't smart enough, or quick enough, or social enough. You went blank because your brain was trying to protect you from judgment, from rejection, from saying the wrong thing at the wrong time. But here's what you now know. It's not your intelligence that shuts down. It's your safety system that kicks in. And the more you fight it, the worse it gets. But the moment you understand this, really understand it, everything changes. Because now you know how to work with your brain, not against it. You know that your posture can change your psychology. Your presence matters more than your performance. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can say is the realest thing on your mind. You don't need perfect words. You need a calm body, a quiet mind, and a real connection. That's how you stop going blank. Not by memorizing lines, but by trusting that who you are, when present, is enough. So the next time the pressure rises, the moment feels big, and the silence creeps in. Remember this, you're not broken, you're just human. And now, you know how to show up as one. She was right there. The smile, the silence, the moment you'd rehearsed 100 times, and yet, nothing came out. But now you understand. It wasn't your voice that failed you. It was your body whispering, "This moment isn't safe." You weren't blank, you were bracing. Because when the stakes feel high, the brain doesn't reach for brilliance, it reaches for safety. And in that space between fear and presence, your words simply wait. They return not when you push harder, but when you soften, when you stop performing and start arriving. Not to impress, but to connect. Not to prove, but to be. So tell us, what's one moment where the silence said more than you wanted it to? Drop it below. Your story might be the reflection someone else needs right now. At Metanoia, we're not just here to help you speak clearly. We're here to help you feel safe inside your own voice again. If this story brought you closer to yourself, like it, share it, or pass it to someone who's still searching for the words, because sometimes healing begins not with what you say, but with knowing you're not alone when the words don't come. Thanks for watching, and thanks truly for staying.